And the first order of business, we're going to pass over the minutes from last meeting. We'll get a chance to review those and look at those next meeting. There's a filing. We want to acknowledge the filing for the accessory apartment at 10 Crestview Lane. So
You had waived that last meeting, and then when John got back from vacation or wherever he was, he said, no. He doesn't, his hands are tied. If the permit's expired, he absolutely cannot issue a building permit on that. So obviously some miscommunication with the applicant and Landon himself. So I said, not a problem. It's a reasonable position. So the applicant has filed all the applications, and we will have that brief meeting before town meeting at 6:20, I think.
Here
on the 8th.
or down here?
Here, 6:20.
Oh, that'll be easy to forget.
Well, do you want to do it there? We can do it there if you
Rather,
want.
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
6:20 there.
There? Okay.
Yeah.
6:20 there.
Yep.
Okay, we'll do it there then. I'll have that changed. 6:20 at high school.
And that's what, the 8th?
Yep.
May 8th?
Yeah.
Actually, did I say 6:20 or 6:40? 6:20, right?
6:20
Just to
is
be
what you
safe.
said.
Right.
You give us some extra time.
All right, so we'll have that 6:20 at the high school, and we'll just approve those two sets of minutes tonight and the 10th right before that.
Okay.
All right.
Form A plans,
None.
covenant extension, bridle path.
Mr. Bernardi was in earlier today, but he was not feeling well. So this is the annual renewal. This subdivision is grandfathered until 2020. Obviously, it's in both the petitioner and the town's best interest to have surety in place while that project is pending and in construction. So you have a request for a 1-year extension of the covenant. I think, what do we put, May 1st of next year? I think it's
April
April
1st.
1st.
April
of
1.
next year. So they're just still in kind of a holding pattern. They got through the title search on the parcel that was, I won't say erroneously, but kind of that they thought the people they bought it from owned, and they didn't. So they got through that lawsuit. They completed the landowner search and the title work. There were about 13 different errors. They've contacted the majority of them, and the technical time has passed on the other errors, but that's kind of still, they feel a little uncertain about that even though a legal timeline has passed for them to get in contact, they're considering kind of their options if they want to go forward with the project exactly as is, or if maybe they want to reduce the land area or scope. So that's kind of where they are right now, just in flux on that latest, all the title findings and what they should do next. What's the best course of action? So, and like I said, they're grandfathered. They can sit until 2020, and this just puts surety in place until they get going.
I'm happy they came in to keep us up to date. I wish I had more news, but oftentimes people don't come in with 6 months out when we find out that they were supposed to come in a year ago, and I'm looking, it was April 1st. I mean, we almost lost a month, so, I mean, I'd be happy to make a motion that we grant a 1-year extension, but we should maybe send out a reminder in March. that
Sure.
If there's going to be another one, we ought to hear about it before the time passes.
Sure. I'm happy to do that.
Just to keep us in the loop.
Second.
I can appreciate the financial challenges. When did this start?
It was,
10 years ago.
Signed in
2007.
10 years ago.
Wayne wasn't even born yet.
I wish. I actually think I was on the board.
There's a motion.
I'll second it.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
You have the paperwork in front of you, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman. You guys you all need to sign out.
Other correspondence?
None.
None. Alright, potential discussion, potential open space subdivision, Leland Hill Road.
Hello,
Hello.
Hi.
Paul Nick here, with your survey and engineering. Here tonight to informally discuss the project that we are working on and trying to get as much input as we can up front to try to smooth the process out. So, we are on Dodge Hill Road is right here, just to kind of get your bearings. This is the corner of Dodge Hill and Central Turnpike, actually right here, and this is Leland Hill Road as it first comes off of Central Turnpike. And there's a parcel of land here that actually includes this piece. It's the Stockwell Farm. Comes in here and goes all the way around here. And what we've been planning and designing is what we'd like to do is an open space community. As you know, in the regulations, where that starts is we're looking at, well, what could we do with a conventional plan that would meet all the subdivision regulations? And you know, these are all things obviously that we'd need to submit as part of our design, but I'm just trying to get as much input up front as possible. So we would look at a proof plan that we have frontage on Leland Hill, we have frontage on Dodge Hill, and we would bring a road through. There'd be a wetland crossing. This green line is the wetland, and the pink line is a buffer zone. So, turn it.
Turn that so that they can see it. You can slide over and I'll slide over.
Oh, it's okay.
Just flip it a little so they can see.
I'll let you do this. So, where we
I'll
start,
stand on this side.
now I'm gonna be blocking out.
Yeah, just.
Oh, you just tell me to do
There you
stuff.
go. Stand on your hands. Picnic.
So where we start is with a conventional design. Obviously, this isn't fully designed, but we're looking at what do we get for a proof plan? How many lots are we looking at that we could do with a conventional road? That would obviously be a lot more road, but meets the subdivision regulations. And our proof plan, which we would need to finalize and submit to you, obviously, is at this point we have 10 lots that we feel like we could get. We need to finalize that, but at this point we're saying we could get 10 lots with a conventional road with a fairly significant amount of roadway and earthwork to build those lots. So as you know, your open space guidelines and rules allow you to look at that number of lots and reduce lot sizes and frontages to try to make a nicer area for those lots and also generate some open space. So in the big picture of this land, what we would like to do and would like to get some input from the board on is to come in off of Leland Hill Road with a cul-de-sac and get 7 lots off of that cul-de-sac over here. As part of the project as well, and we'd have to show that we meet all the open space criteria, which as you can see, there'd be a fairly large portion of the property that would become open space. We also probably would then be able to generate the open space, get the amount of lots, and potentially have 2 essentially A&R lots that would come out of that the space isn't necessary for the open space part of the project. So those would become separate plans, an A&R plan and a separate filings with conservation and things of that nature. So that's sort of the overall picture. But what we'd really like to get input on as well is sort of zooming in on the open space cul-de-sac, is that we're coming in off of Leland Hill Road. We're coming in, it's a 9% grade, which is the maximum basically allowed under the subdivision regs. We come in, and as shown here, we have a 700-foot cul-de-sac. And as I mentioned, that comes up, we have the leveler, we meet the leveling area, so we're meeting the grading requirements. We're coming up at that 9% slope, and we level out through the cul-de-sac as well. As you can see, the land slopes from the bottom of the page to the top of the page, so you're moving up the hill as you come into the site. And what we're trying to set up is sort of a community where we have the cul-de-sac right here, and we're using the larger cul-de-sac as specified in the regulations. And what we have here is lots that have 75 feet of frontage and are about 40,000 square feet. So they're smaller than the regulations under the R1 zone. They're about half the area, plus or minus. And we're able to, again, generate that open space parcel that will go into some sort of, whether it be land trust or the town takes it, or things of that nature. We actually were at conservation the other night and discussed where that might go as well, so that where that becomes and who owns that, is yet to be decided, but it certainly is something that we would discuss throughout the process.
Paul, where's the 700 feet to? Front of the cul-de-sac?
The end. So it's from basically the middle of Leland Hill Road to the end of the cul-de-sac.
So you need a waiver.
So we need a waiver for 200 feet, basically. And that 200 feet, well, this is 176 feet wide, so essentially the 200 feet is the cul-de-sac. And what that allows us to do is to get the grade up higher so that we can set these lots up and be able to come off of the cul-de-sac. It gives us, what we're trying to do is wind the road and set the cul-de-sac where we can get it up in elevation to work with the land as much as possible, and really just set up the open space community to be somewhat reflective of the conventional plan. We actually have 7, as I mentioned, and at this point the proof plan has 10, but we feel that this is what really fits the land. So we'd be asking for a waiver from the 700 feet, and we'd be looking, and I'm just seeing what the board thinks of, perhaps going from 26 feet to 24 feet. The reason being is, as you can see, this is a fairly short dead end with not dramatic curves in it. Part of what I'm trying to do for both planning and from a conservation standpoint, which was well received the other night, is that we'll have swales and low impact development as part of this project. This, as of right now, to right here, so essentially to the beginning of the cul-de-sac is field right now. So what we want to do is have some swales, and we want to make stormwater facilities within that field and use seed mixes and even perhaps some shrubs within those basins that will enhance the field. Where there already is field, we'll use those mixes to try to enhance the field and not have any impacts on certainly conservation issues, but also just aesthetically as you go into the project and as you drive by the project. Another thing that kind of comes up is that right now, again, this is field, and the regulations talk about having a 50-foot, not disturbing vegetation within 50 feet of the perimeter of the project. So what we were sort of wanted to get the interpretation of the board on is, okay, so we have some field here, so perhaps we can leave that field and or maybe add some screening to enhance the screening of abutters. Those are things that we'd like to discuss, I guess, tonight. And then just really get any input from the board that you see. I realize this is the first time that you've seen this, but those are sort of the pavement width, the 50-foot buffer. Again, we're asking for a 700-foot road, not overly excessive, and again, we're not trying to even really max out because of the grades. We're trying to fit the cul-de-sac where it fits. And we're trying to get 7 lots out of this cul-de-sac. And then sort of lastly, the regulation speaks to any area within 100 feet of a wetland that we should try to stay out of, essentially. I'm going to look at that per our conversations with conservation in terms of moving things a little bit away from it, but stormwater will most likely need to be in that field. So I wanted to get the board's opinion on that stipulation in the bylaw, and I could certainly read it if you want, or if you're not familiar with it, in terms of to keep the project out of that 100-foot buffer would not suit it well, in that we need to get stormwater in the lower area of the parcel. And I feel like, again, we can really situate that stormwater where it will enhance the existing environment instead of being detrimental.
Is the pink line the 100-foot setback?
The pink is the 100-foot setback. So the roadway is not significantly into it, and the rest will be swales and again, stormwater features. We do have one house that will be slightly into it, and then the rest of the houses would be completely out of it. So I guess, if the board has any questions or any input, we'd appreciate it.
The board obviously hasn't done an open space subdivision or reviewed one for quite some time, so there's
Fair
several
enough. Yep,
members
it's
who aren't familiar with the regs at all. Your lot sizes as proposed are not actually as small as they could be under the regulations, so I want to make that point.
So we
Public
could go
roadway,
to a third of the lot size, and I'm at a half, basically.
you're going to propose this as a public roadway?
Yes.
Usually on roadway widths, 24 isn't unreasonable, but where you have a 9% grade and not room to work in terms of emergency services off either side, the board would usually seek the input of the fire department and, the emergency services department on road width reductions. 26 feet is like a highway. It's like a runway in this town. 26 feet is huge. So.
Yeah, certainly the road going there is not 26 feet
Right,
wide.
the board generally tends to try to get away from 26 feet if possible, but in this case where, the entirety of the length of that cul-de-sac is a 90% slope and it's kind of a drop off either side, they just, I would assume, want to double check with the safety department to make sure they're comfortable with that. And then obviously the highway department we've never built one of the 176 diameter cul-de-sacs. Mark Brigham actually proposed that when he was highway superintendent, because he did a calculation that he said he could, with that width island and that width outer edge, he could go one direction and then back the other direction and be done. That was his theory for that layout. I don't know how the current highway superintendent feels about that. We'd certainly seek his input on that.
Just for process,
Mm-hmm.
the pre-application meeting, we're not at that stage. You're before this meeting?
Yeah,
Or do you
I
consider
didn't
this-
request it as such.
Okay.
But there's certainly enough information here to discuss it as that, but I think informally we could discuss it tonight. I could come back with some answers that we're talking about now and have that pre-application hearing soon.
Approval of a preliminary plan will shorten the period of review. So the preliminary plan is the traditional layout,
Right, it's called the yield plan.
which is the yield plan. That may be, well, that's a place to start to understand the quantity of homes that could be built.
Right, that's
Correct.
that first
Right.
plan.
And I know you had the plan, but, that's the plan that you drew on the drawing, whether it's, we have to go through that process first.
Oh, I understand, totally, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that's the end of it. I
Okay.
understand, that's part of the submittal process.
All right.
Mhm.
Who maintains the open space and the field? Is the field part of Lot 1, or is it?
The field is part of Lot 1 at this point, or actually Lot 2. There'd probably be an easement over it for stormwater. So in terms of the open space, I think there's a few different ways it could go. The town could take it, so perhaps that's the Conservation Commission, who did show some interest in it, or another entity that's, I think Conservation can you can gift it to them. Other ways have to go through town meeting and things. That could be a land trust, or there could be a homeowners association. So one of those things would happen. We're probably partial to the town having it. I don't know what the town would say about that, but that would be our thoughts. But we haven't gotten that far to start to go through that, but
Yeah.
that's what we would look to do. And/or, again, I don't want to say last resort, but last sort of checklist is you just make a homeless association as you sell, and they own it, which they may like. It could be an amenity to them.
Yeah.
This is a bylaw we've never applied, and it's probably 8 pages long,
Really?
and half of that is about open space. What to do, how to maintain it, what you can do in it, what you can't do in it.
The DeFutis, I think, right across from Burnap Road, was an open space subdivision that, in the past, the board actually, I believe, went through the full approval process on that, and then it just went nowhere. So, like I said, we haven't really gone through a full approval process on one in a very long time.
Is the process to go through what would traditionally be, like what he showed that first
You don't go
drawing?
through the actual public hearing and stuff. Basically,
no.
you come to the planning board with a yield plan, and the planning board will, and I will review it as if I have a formal filing in front of me for a subdivision. Basically, I'll be looking at whether they can meet the road grades, whether each lot meets the upland requirements, all of those things. And once you verify that in an open meeting, then that becomes their base. And then they have 10 lots or 9 lots or however many lots you verify to work with as they go into the open space subdivision production. So, and then they have to meet all the requirements of the open space subdivision. There has to be a certain percentage of open space. It has to, no more of it than 50% of it, I believe, can be wetlands or slopes over a certain percentage. They have to meet all those individual requirements, and that is done in the public hearing process with standard notification to abutters within 300 feet. And it's pretty much a subdivision process, just with a different set of requirements. And the intent is really, especially as this is proposed as a public road, to reduce the amount of roadway that the public ends up having to maintain, and to lock down, create permanently protected open space. And as you know, lately in the market, people tend to be downsizing. People want less yard to maintain, so these smaller lot houses, and you see that actually in the affordable housing development farther up on Leland Hill, these size house lots are really going like hotcakes because people just want to downsize. This one's a little trickier because all of these lots will be sloped uphill, so
Yeah,
it's
so
definitely not the easiest
So
thing.
what is the cut in the back? I see, what's the contour line spacing on that back? Or what is the distance from the bottom of the slope to the top of it? How high is that?
It's probably, at its most, probably 100-foot slope at, not 100 foot vertically, 100 foot horizontally at 2 to 1.
So it's 50
Basically.
feet high.
This is 560. It's probably around that, yeah. So basically, the way that this is set up to try to look at how the lots would work. So again, we have the road coming up at 9%. It levels out through the cul-de-sac.
45.
And what I show is 10% slope up to the houses, which is a pretty reasonable driveway. And then I show the houses with some grading through them. And then about a 40-foot backyard, which could be flat, or, it'd probably slope
That's
away.
where that's
and
where
then
the sleds
away.
are gonna stop when they come down. that
Yeah, there'll be plenty
That's
of
the
room to
stopping
stop.
area.
And then,
Good place to go
have a
sled.
2-to-1 cut up the hill. Now, I'm doing some soil testing out there, so perhaps we add a bench in the middle of that slope or something. But to do a 2-to-1 cut in a slope is,
Stuff.
it's tough, but it's certainly something that I do fairly often. So, I mean, I think it's doable, and then we just need to, you know, get it stabilized.
Yeah, it won't look like the backyards on the other project.
And again, perhaps we have a wildflower mix mixed in with a grassy seed mix that grows tall, and it's low maintenance, and it vegetates itself, and looks good rather than just looks like a slope. You know, I think that you try to do those type of things to enhance the project.
Yeah, that was my only other question or comment on this, is an open space subdivision is supposed to be designed so that the homes in the open space subdivision, the majority of them, if not all of them, have kind of direct access and use of the open space. So during the process, Paul and his team are gonna have to show how the majority of those homes have actual physical access to that open space. So, say they were all cliff dwellings and they all have to learn how to rock climb to get to the open space, that's probably not doable. So he's gonna have to work that into the design.
And what, if you go up there, what is that? Is that wooded, is that field?
It's wooded right now. The field ends right here.
Oh, the rest is all woods, okay.
Yep, this is woods.
Okay.
I think it's a little less
Satellite.
dense over, the density sort of varies.
This is the field here. There's a gas pipe over there too, isn't
The
it?
gas
Nowhere
is
close to
up the
here?
front
Oh, it's
here.
right there.
Yeah, we may go through the easement some, but we're not bringing any utilities necessarily. We don't have any drainage or anything that we need to do if we're doing a low impact development, so we won't be
Right.
affecting that.
Paul, can,
This power,
excuse me. Lot 2, can you show me the outline of Lot 2?
It's basically the whole, well, there's not a line here now, but it's this whole thing. Actually, it is right here, right now.
Okay.
So this is actually, as we show it right now, is all part of the open space. It's wetland, but it'd be sort of permanently protected and as part of the open space.
and that's 700 feet. What's the driveway length on the other, the plan, the traditional plan?
It's like a
Just for
road.
It
comparison.
was a through road.
The through road, yeah.
Through road?
Yeah.
Yeah, so just for reference, this is about 500 right here. I don't have an exact length, but I'm gonna say that it's at least 2,500 feet long. You know, it's 3 to 4 times longer, definitely.
Do you
I
have a
mean, this
question?
cul-de-sac right here is probably as long as what we're looking at doing only,
Okay.
you know, forgetting the through road. And obviously, I would have all those numbers on a submittal
Right.
for your proof
But the
plan.
intention is any of the road would be owned by the town of Sutton and maintained by the town of Sutton?
Yes, yeah, we build it to standards such
Yeah.
that it would be accepted.
And there wouldn't be any A&R lots on this?
No, because, sorry, we'd be using all of that land.
What
as
about-
part-
what about
Well, yeah,
the-
this one would be
That one
regardless,
there?
yeah, but not
Is
down
that where the
here.
barn is right now?
That is the barn lot, yes. Yep. So that would be separate regardless, really.
Yep.
It's kind of off by itself anyways.
There's a few houses sprinkled in there too, right?
There's
One there.
one house right here.
One right there.
What do you have, Bob?
Paul, and thank you for coming in. Be patient with us. I
Absolutely.
recognize that, well, first of all, on the length of the driveway, it's supposed to be 500 feet. This board lately, if the fire department and the police department are fine with it at 600, it tends to not. It's about getting 911 calls in, the fire truck, it's all safety stuff.
Sure.
So I don't think you have to worry about it being over 500 feet, as long as it's big enough so everything that's important can get in there and get out of there. And they, two of them can show up at the same time.
ZBA.
But clearly in
No, that's
Sutton,
the zoning district.
the traditional easy lots to build on
Maybe this is one.
have been built on. So this is the future. And as we move into these creative uses of land and try to preserve open space, I, for one, will have a lot of dumb questions because it's kind of new for me. But I appreciate you coming in tonight. And I find it fascinating. You say people will buy something like this. It's not the traditional.
So it's still, yeah, I mean, as of right now, there's still around 40,000. We could go smaller, you could be as low as a third or around a half.
Yeah.
And they will be on septic systems, so that satisfies Title V. We actually could, what they call aggregate the land, so we could go smaller still even with septic systems, but I think we're trying to hit a happy medium with everything in terms of lot size. 40,000 is still a pretty good sized lot.
The lots inside Leland Hill Estates
Yeah.
are 10,000 square foot lots.
Okay.
So you're still talking lots 4 times
Yeah.
the size of Leland Hill Estates.
No, it's, and for me, I usually have to go home and sleep on it. And then I have a question 2 days later, so come back. Before you go, before
Well,
you
yeah, I
spend too
think
much
what-
money.
What I'm
come
hearing
back,
is
'cause
that
things-
I'll try to answer questions that we do have, maybe go see the fire chief, police chief,
Yeah, and
and
that was
then
my-
come back in for that official, what was it, informal?
Oh, it's called the,
Or pre-application, perhaps?
yeah. This is a lot of pages in this thing.
The last thing I was gonna say, it won't cost you money to bring this into the fire chief and have him look at it,
Right,
find out which way
sure.
the wind's blowing.
Yep.
Certainly worth stopping in and seeing Nick. I mean, there's people, and that's what they're here for, because it's the future. We need to do business. So it preserves open space, so I like that part of it. I just want to make sure it really does that. That's just my opinion.
Yep, sure.
I don't know if there's anyone else that hasn't weighed in.
Yeah, it's called the pre-application meeting. So this was to preserve open space and minimize infrastructure, was the intention of the bylaw.
And this really, I
Put
mean,
this
by
to-
doing LID, we're really heading down that road. We're combining a couple of techniques.
Yeah,
really.
Right,
exactly.
so low impact development, taking out the catch basins, taking out the underground pipes that are harder and more costly for the highway department to maintain long term. Doing it in a swale, so you can see when there's an issue and it's on the surface, so it's easier to take care of.
So you've read this, you're familiar with the
Oh,
bylaw, so
certainly,
you're
yep,
in good
yep.
position
You
from
get
that
another answer.
standpoint.
Quick comment, the Brandon O'Neill, son of Lynn O'Neill, one of the owners, one of the benefits that I see of this project is that it is directly abuts Keown Orchard, which is now owned by Kenny Foffman, but that's, as you may know, is in a 100-year conservation status. Probably 15 years have already gone by. But they have 200 acres there, and this land abuts their land. So it adds contiguous space to their land and doesn't prevent fragmentation.
Now, which
He owns
border is that? The one
permanent
that's shown on
The
here?
one up top,
Yeah.
right here.
Up there.
Yep. That's all open space, basically, yeah. Okay.
Anything you didn't think you got enough input on?
I think I certainly got good input for the next, I guess the next thing, so we have a pre-application. And then to me, I think from there,
You're jumping into it.
yeah, I think we're doing definitive. We can run everything at once, just do open space, it's all one,
One process.
yeah,
Mhm.
okay. Any other comments that anybody was thinking? Okay. Thanks very much, I appreciate your time.
You-
Thanks for coming in.
Each exciting. Yeah.
Catch up.
Yeah.
Get the
Okay. 7:15.
7:15.
Planning board time.
All right, discussion on clean energy collective solar screening, 60 Worcester Turnpike. Worcester Providence Turnpike.
Hello. Doug Carton, Clean Energy Collective, the project manager, CEC on the project.
I don't see a plan, so let me get one? Yeah?
Yeah, I didn't have to bring one.
That's the future.
I reviewed the
Yeah.
site with Jen last week, and just went over basically current conditions, not existing at this point. But here, maybe a month ago, talked about it.
Can you please speak up a little bit? I can't hear you.
I was just saying, I reviewed with Jen last week on site, just went over some
I mounted our
current conditions out
billy
there.
goats and we climbed up the
That's how you
hill.
go about landscaping for the final product.
All right, so this is the signed
Anyone
plan.
wanna come up? Anyone wanna come up?
Anybody? Anybody?
Oh, okay.
Jim.
Come on, Jim.
I don't understand why you were sitting down.
All right, so
I
this is
didn't know, I thought
the.
this was a super secret meeting.
That's against the law.
We're all on tape.
This was the approved plan. We had the ravine thingy through here that they needed to do grading in to get these in. And then just some screening right along the fence line and a lot of screening low. And then just these additional plantings. Within this area, they were supposed to cut the trees, leave the stumps, and leave understory plantings that were 5 feet tall or less. When they were putting this in, lots of rocks. This is New England, and the rocks got piled in this area. They got piled in here, and they got piled in here to some degree, squishing or smushing or upgrading the understory plantings. So you have my photographs from our site visit the other day. The rocks that were taken out of here are ginormous. Okay, there are some rocks that are like whale size. They're just huge. A lot of them are piled right here in congregate. I had this is just this for scale of some of the smaller rocks, just so you can see the scale.
We don't know how tall he is, though. Oh,
There
it's you. Now we got
you go. Some of the rocks.
Not that tough.
There's you can't
That's
see
why I
it.
get to go out, make them look larger.
Yeah.
So this is taken from up here.
Right, what I tried to
Looking this
do was, this is
About right here.
the plan that they've proposed, which you can see. You can go over with what you're proposing, and then I took the photographs and I showed you where each one was
Oh, I
taken
see.
from.
Okay.
Okay, so it's as if you're standing looking this way, standing looking that way, or whatever. All right, so you can go over what we were proposing. A part of the consideration really was that, I mean, you could, if you want, say, he's got to take all of these rocks off the site, period. You could do that. They do have kind of a screening quality, if you look at number 1, on their own, which is kind of
They
interesting.
certainly block the view of the array, if that's what you were going
It's kind of
for.
interesting,
Look at Rack.
but it's
And then the highway's below that view, it's lower. Like
well, it's
below
not,
that.
you actually looking in this direction, you're not really looking towards the highway, you're kind
Number
of looking
1
towards
would be-
this line.
Yeah, so
over
off to your
here.
side.
Yeah.
So, but in the least, my thought was, up here, these screenings along the fence line are useless. They should not be here. All of these screenings along the fence line should be moved back to the property line. Every single one of these.
So that's what
So
you're
all of these
Here.
should come back here.
indicating that.
When this was originally approved, this
Mm-hmm.
was supposed to be, the standard setback is 100 feet undisturbed, right?
50.
50 feet
Mm-hmm.
undisturbed. So as part of the process, they got a waiver of the undisturbed to,
To do this.
and there was discussion at meetings about, we had a few discussions about how it was going to be done, and the intention is, what happens to stone walls and rock piles in Sutton? They get covered with bittersweet and poison ivy that eventually takes over, so my concern is keeping, and my property's here, this giant rock pile is going to become an unmaintainable disaster of overgrowth. You can't maintain it. That was the purpose of having no rock piles, was so that periodically, they said they would want to keep the height of everything down to 5 feet or less for the solar purposes. And now it's just going to be,
Yeah, I think part of the problem is we.
I feel
need-
bad. It's going to cost a fortune to do it, but they had a plan approved to do it, and they got concessions as regards to originally. So, I mean, I don't, I know it's a huge
The permitting
inconvenience.
process on this project specifically. I actually had my first day of work for CEC at one of our hearings, but
Okay. Well, welcome.
I think part of the problem was we
Welcome
didn't
to
even
the world.
discuss.
Yeah.
We didn't even discuss what we should have discussed, well, because it didn't come into play on Oakhurst Road. We really didn't have these big rock issues on Oakhurst Road. It was a very different terrain. It had some rock removal, but not like this. And so I didn't really.
The
we didn't
rock
get
could have
into
been
the-
trucked as it was excavated, right? I mean, it's a real unfortunate, costly problem now that could have been addressed in a different way during the construction process, and that's
Well,
what we've
certainly
done.
could have come in here and had this conversation before the rocks were left on a pile.
yeah,
It's a lot of
unfortunately, this was a
rocks, and
lot
it's
of
a-
winter construction. So it was
Right, it was winter construction.
not ideal from really any
Yeah.
perspective.
So I don't disagree with what Jim is saying about rock piles and what happens to rock piles, without a doubt. And like I said, you certainly can tell them, you've got to all truck it off. But in the least, this line does no good here. It shouldn't be here. It does no good here. This doesn't do the job it needs to do. You can see this is standing here looking this way, and it's all leveled and graded. This is the property line right there. So when you're looking at number 4, you're basically standing here looking this way, and it's flat, and there's nothing in it. So
But there's supposed to be something in there.
there's supposed to be these few things, yes.
We have not done any plantings yet.
No,
so-
no, that was the purpose of kind of
So
this
what
meeting
is,
to
what is
assess.
that?
That's
A big tree,
not a big tree.
or a
It
tree of
is
some
a
type?
Canadian hemlock, so it's a tree that'll go in at 6 feet high and will grow pretty quickly, if the conditions are right, obviously. So these things are relatively, well, over here, you might keep some of these because you actually do have a house over here, although they've gotten easements for this, given the easements for this property, so, and they are doing some stuff for them over here. So you might keep some of this, but all of these things along the fence line, they don't affect screening for the purpose, which is to screen from the abutters. They need to be moved back to the lot line, because the closer you are to the lot line, the taller a plant is basically to the abutters.
This is
So-
also uphill from
Right,
the
and
array,
it's
so-
uphill, so you get
You bring
these
that up,
plantings
you get-
all here, you've got way more
Much more
effective
effective.
screening.
So-
Way more effective. And in here, all the way down this lot line, I've already talked about, there is a need all the way down because the rocks that are in there just smushed everything, for all kinds of understory plantings. So I would suggest mountain laurel and the things that were there before, all down this.
Well, this
area.
down, this whole thing right here is all covered in rocks.
Yeah, well, it's not covered in rocks. There's a line of rocks
Yeah,
down,
it's-
kind of down the middle of it.
This is a little more organized through this area, but it is still somewhat scattered. So what Jen and I came up
It's a
with,
pile.
which is essentially this.
Oh, yeah, down the middle of it.
So it would be
Yeah, here.
essentially consolidating rocks in this area that are kind of scattered and taking up all of the area that they don't need to be, and then just organizing this line so that it's neat and somewhat reasonable, rather than taking up all of this, so that we could restore the area, give it a jump start with plantings, et
Is
cetera,
it-
so that the understory would come back more quickly.
Last fall, and Wayne, you can probably speak to it, every year, winter comes, frost heaves, and hayfields produce rocks. And we don't deal with them like we didn't in my backyard for a while. They start making equipment break. So last fall, we went out and picked all the spots where the rocks were growing. But we dug a hole, put it back in the ground again. I can't imagine trying to get rid of, is there any place where you can bury them all? Can you, and then if there's dirt there, that, at least that you can get some money for, but,
Yeah.
but
That is typically what we try to do on projects when we encounter
Unfortunately-
a lot of rock. This one, a couple reasons. One, we were a little worried because really the surface conditions did not show the amount of rocks that we have on site there. So it was, once we got into the grading, it was much more extreme than we thought. So we were worried that with digging it up, we might make the situation worse.
more rocks.
And then being winter construction to cause that kind of disturbance
Well,
through winter and see what happens come spring, it would have been very messy. it's been a very messy site.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
certainly something we could try to do with some of the rocks.
and I'm just
I mean, there's got to be space somewhere to get rid of some of them.
in between all the solar panels. It's just, they're not gonna grow, so they have a height.
Yeah.
That'd be hard to make. It's just trying to figure out a way that I can appreciate it. You gotta do something with them. And yes, yeah, we can make you move them. That's cost prohibitive. There's a way to make it,
Absolutely.
I don't know. What are you doing with rocks up?
Well, what's the intention with
Quite a lot
this
of money.
space? What are you gonna do each year in this area? Nothing? Or is it gonna get cut once in a while?
It
Or
might
just
get
left?
cut in 10, 15 years to 5, 6 feet and then left again. It's really not to be maintained. Generally speaking, we just kind of keep things off the fence.
I'm pretty sure that during the hearings, it was gonna be maintained, and the height, their concern was infringement on the solar panels, and the height was gonna be, they were gonna keep trimming the height of the stuff to keep
5 feet.
the sun from interfering to, there was,
Right.
there
Which
was
is-
maintenance involved with the landscape around the perimeter
Yeah.
where the rocks are now.
Which is true. It's just, it's really not very often. Even inside the array, it might be twice a year. Outside the array, it really will probably end up being, I'd be surprised if it was before 5 years.
Well, I think
really
that they,
tend to.
as part of, I think that was discussed, and I think that there was a representation made to the town, I don't remember what it was, but there was a maintenance plan involved.
Mr. Chairman?
Question?
Yeah. I do remember that, and I believe 5 feet was the magic number. My question was, if you consolidate these rocks, to the abutter's comment, how will you maintain, I mean, the rocks are gonna be 5 feet high, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
How are you gonna maintain growth coming up in between them and stuff like that if you consolidate them all? Picture number 2, number 3, if you make a more,
Thank you.
if you make a more organized row of them to kind of resemble a wall, again, how will you maintain that 5 feet, which I'm pretty sure is on the plan here somewhere that we signed as a condition?
Oh, yeah. it
Yeah,
says 5 feet.
we were, the intent was that things under 5 feet would be able to remain. What's the intent? So that would be the minimum that we'd be cutting it down to, right? That's kind of what we want to reserve the right to be able to do. So if it starts growing up, we want to be able to know that we could cut it down to 5 feet, and that then we can let it grow up again. So it's not a constant, I need to keep this at 5 feet kind of thing. So it would really end up being handwork.
You could bring a crusher in and process the rock.
That is certainly a way to do it.
Just the other side of
There's one
146.
time across the street.
Right across the road,
Ready to go.
It's ready to go. It's right out in
Not
front.
allow them to start up the machines on that side of the highway.
Picture number 5.
And then the neighbors will start coming in.
If you allow that to grow much more than 5 feet, the way that array appears to me, you're gonna be interfering with the sun on those panels.
Yeah, well, so I guess there's kind of an angle that you need to create, right? Which is, so when we look at maintaining it, we'd be looking at, well, where's the shade coming from? The shade's coming from a tree line here that's, 60 feet tall. So at what point does the growth in here get to the point that now this is shading it rather than this? And it will be pretty extreme, right? It's probably more towards 15, 20 feet that we really have to go in there and look at cutting stuff. And then hopefully at that point, it's not everything's 15, 20 feet. There's going to be a lot of low growing. And that's part of what we're proposing. It would be low growth plants. So that when we do go in, it's selectively cutting and trimming so that we knock that back down. And the shade is really the shade as we expect in model, which is the limit of clearing, I guess.
So the question kind of is, are you trying to promote a manicured solar site, or do you just want a solar site that you don't see and you don't care how that's accomplished, more or less.
Do we, I assume we have conditions for this. Would that be addressed in there?
I believe the
Potentially.
conditions
Are they
should be
written
on the
down
set of
in there?
plans.
Maintenance?
Conditions should be on the set of plans. No. Our conditions, you mean?
Yeah.
No, that's there.
Is that a hole? Number 4 is.
Number 4, looking this way.
3. Number 4. No, there's 2.
Oh, that's, it's stump grindings. We've been using to spread on site and maintain.
Oh, okay. All right.
That's what that is.
No.
It's a pile of stump grindings. The only thing that's held that site together, stump grindings.
It is. A site you should go look at.
I was going to say, yeah.
And I really think you could benefit from that,
Yeah.
honestly.
It looks better today, actually. They've been,
Yeah.
That's pretty subjective.
Tomorrow's
been
going to be
working pretty hard.
miserable up there, though.
yeah.
Yeah, if you haven't gone up there, I definitely think you could benefit from a walk. Just hiking shoes, okay?
Yeah.
And ones that do well with mud.
Yeah. I think a good part of the site's
I remember him talking about screening.
25%.
So here's a condition of approval. Number 12, prior to endorsement, which we have done, the developer will supplement screening plantings in the southwest corner. That's the southwest corner, correct? You will supplement screening plantings in the southwest corner of the project in accordance with the commentary from the public hearing.
Right, so those are the plants they added.
Yep.
They added those plants and you approved those few plants that they added.
So we do have a fairly substantial landscaping plan at the moment, but
Fence line.
30-foot high rock pile.
So if those plantings get moved,
All this,
if
these
all of
ones.
this stuff
Yeah, those. should
gets
be-
moved
those need
all
to
the
be
way
moved.
back,
These are the ones they added.
he won't, I'm concerned that you're the one, the only one that's going to look at it.
I'm less concerned about the aesthetics than I
Okay.
am about the maintenance.
So-
Right, My concern is that it's not an out-of-control rock pile disaster that spreads into all the trees on the property lines. And
If all this stuff comes back here, whether it's 2 years from now or 5 years from now, when you go in and try to manage that
You can't.
growth,
You can't.
it's rocks. I
Yeah.
can't imagine what,
so that would be part of this where you're consolidating the rocks, and what Jen and I had talked about was
Move them
actually moving them
Toward
towards
their
the
fence line.
so that the rocks would mainly be, right in this area. Where
Along
right now
their
they're kind
fence.
of like more tucked in the corner. So we'd push them back
Right.
towards the fence line, try to consolidate so that.
in 5 years from now, when they hire someone to do that, you better not be working there anymore, because they're going to come to find you. Say, what were
But
you
it becomes,
thinking?
if you're pushing the rocks towards their fence, away from the abutters, so you're
Yeah.
creating a substantial, because I forget what the scale is on this baby. So you're creating well over 100 feet of buffer
Separation, right.
between the property line and where the rocks are. And then you're doing the kind of plantings you should be doing back there.
Back there.
Which are the maintained trees, the mountain
Right.
laurel, the things that look good and should be there and not be touched, other than their periodic cutting to keep things under 5 feet. If the rocks are closer to their fence line, then it's gonna behoove them to maintain whatever's going on in those rocks on a more regular basis, or it's gonna screw with their fence and their panels and those things. So when we were talking, that's what we were talking about, getting those rocks away from the property line, pulling them more towards the fence and taking all the plantings that are against the fence and pushing those to the property line to achieve the screening that should have been achieved really in the beginning on this site. Because this was the supplemental planting that was required prior to endorsement.
Right.
And frankly, this isn't gonna do much, for this uphill kind of, this is all cleared right now. It's flat as a pancake.
Right.
So it needs these plantings along the edges and sprinkled in. As does this. And part of the problem here is there was a logging operation on the Stratford property that wasn't the kindest logging operation, so this is very wide open, and kind of piles of debris and from that logging operation, so that's unfortunate as well. But you don't want to make anything worse, you know? You don't want to make it look worse. So. But so that was my general suggestion when we were out there, is kind of, like you said, if you can bury some, you bury them. Great suggestion. And then what's left, you kind of organize and push towards their fence. So you create a big separation between the rock pile and the property line. And then you take all of these plantings that were supposed to go against the fence and you push them to the property line. So you have nice, healthy, good-looking screening.
The town holds a surety bond, right?
The only thing the surety bond is for removal of the panels.
Okay, so it doesn't, there's no maintenance of landscape or?
No, because it's a private site, so once they, the town doesn't have really the right to go onto a private site and maintain things. If they don't maintain things, we can just levy fines and things like that if maintenance was a condition of approval, which maintenance in this case wasn't.
Well, it was
really.
per the discussion of the town meeting, and I think at that discussion, we talked about maintenance as, you know, I'm sure I can, there's a tape we can probably watch.
We have
But,
a standard O&M plan that we submit with pretty much every package.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's.
Yeah, it was
that's
kind of
fine.
more on.
Could the surety bond that the town holds be extended to cover a maintenance plan in connection with a remedial plan with this work? I mean, they're kind of asking for a get-out-of-jail-free card as it relates to, I don't know what happened to the plans on the site. Obviously, they weren't there because they weren't followed. We have this situation that's a mess. It needs to be addressed. I think how it's addressed and how it's maintained, to have a discussion as it relates to maintenance at this time is appropriate. And I don't know if it's within the town's power to attach the surety bond, maintenance plan to the surety bond, but it seems to me that the town issued conditions that were disregarded once. I'm not all that confident that they're going to be adhered to a second time.
I don't know what they can do with respect to implementing a surety bond that wasn't part of the original conditions. I mean, I can certainly.
Well, not a new one, but an extension of the, you know, adding the maintenance plan to be covered by the existing bond. No more additional financial security, no more, but just including
Right,
a maintenance.
My guess is no.
yeah.
I think what my intent is to do is to come up with a plan that satisfies the board, is a reasonable, I don't know, restoration might be kind of a strong word, but, in some way restore the area and help kickstart the restoration of it. And I would imagine that would be tied to the closing out of the existing permit if approved. So in that sense, it is tied to it.
So the only place that we feel at this point that's really become the problem is the rocks, because we haven't done any plantings yet. It's not summertime yet.
No,
No, and the additional
rock.
grading is really
Just the rock.
due to
So that's the only place that they've,
The rocks are where the plants go, so they
Yeah.
can't plant the plants.
yeah.
well, the rocks aren't where the plants, well, the rocks are where understory was supposed to be left.
Yeah, so
And
the
because the
movement of the
rocks
rocks.
Swooshed all the understory,
Yeah.
basically.
Now, the plantings in the southwest corner or whatever, that were the stipulation, that
Yeah, the rocks aren't there.
the
The rocks are not in that area. I have a photograph of that whole area, and it's flat as a pancake. Yeah, because it's right up against the, those plantings were kind of, they're not in a great spot.
Just get rid of the rocks.
The fence plantings need.
It's
And
aggregates.
then they'll take
Rock
them out
plant.
to the corner where you
Substantial.
look from.
We've dealt with it on the
Those ones
project.
they
You
put on
did,
the
yeah, I
plan.
was gonna say, they're right
not
down the
gonna
street.
affect good
It's not
screening
like
from
you're
the
out
rain.
and,
They're just not.
Yeah, give them free rocks, they'll come and get them.
No, they
Free
won't.
rocks.
No, they won't.
Well, no, I'm telling
Unfortunately,
you,
it's a lot of work.
once you walk on the site and you
see how
see
hard
the
it is.
slope you have to
Yeah.
go up to
It-
get to the rock pile.
So roll them down.
There are some rocks that are
There's a CrossFit place.
pickup truck
Roll them down there.
size.
Get the CrossFitters to go up and throw rocks down.
I guess I'd like to see the rocks consolidated, neatened up, and not to exceed 5 feet out of the ground. To try to conform to,
Would you say piles not to exceed, because rock, there are certain rocks that are well over 5 feet.
Then you're gonna,
So they get
in my eyes, you're gonna make the highest point of the rock at 5 feet. You need to bury it partially, that's okay. But that's gonna allow you in the future to maintain from the ground without equipment to get higher, to be able to cut stuff. And that, I agree with your abutter, that if they're just kind of pushed into a pile, it might be maintained for a little while, but not for long.
So I agree, you should come up with a plan for this and come back to us. The the escrow account, bond or otherwise, is to cover the cost of removal in the event the town must remove the LSPI and remediate the landscape. That's what it's for. Remediate the landscape, not to do landscape.
So,
So you want something,
with that remediate the landscape, if these rocks stay in the situation they are now, and this company fails and the town has to come in and remove the panels and restore that, the town's gonna have to deal with those rocks.
Well, the rocks are existing, so if you're really just bringing it back to what it was, then I guess you would scatter them.
Well, where were they when you found them? Buried?
under all of these.
Yeah, they were buried in the dirt,
In
right?
the woods.
In the woods?
I mean, mostly poking up from the ground, but not completely
Oh, there's
out.
no-
Exposed,
Yeah,
because a lot of it was a surprise, it sounded like there was that there was that much of it.
yeah, or just that they were so large, you know, you see a rock poking up, you don't expect it to be
Tip of the
12
iceberg.
feet
It's like the
deep.
iceberg.
China.
It's like the iceberg.
We are, we are in
It
Sutton.
looks like a pebble on the surface, but.
Huge.
Yeah,
So I agree, we have a plan that was approved, that's not what it looks like today, so I guess, to me, the ball's in your court. Rather than us telling you what to do, you should come in with a plan that we can review.
So you want something much more detailed than this, basically. You want him to show, you know, a plan like this that says these plants go here, the rock pile is actually this big, and we're gonna make it this wide and this high and put it here. You want something very
Yes.
detailed.
Won't be higher than 5 feet off the ground. If you gotta do some burying, do some burying.
I agree.
Okay.
That at least gets us somewhat in confirmation with the original plan.
Which, there was a lot of discussion about it, I remember that.
Yep.
So take a look, if you get a chance, take a walk, because it will
Open your eyes.
open your eyes.
When would you like the plan by? Because we would like to do all the plantings this growing season.
Then the sooner you get it in here, the sooner we'll have it discussed and set up.
Well, I don't know what your schedule
May
is
8th
like.
is town meeting, next meeting is town meeting.
Next meeting's
Like
town
Congress, we go into
And then-
recess for quite a
It's
while
2 weeks
here.
after-
No, we do not.
2 weeks after May 8th, when's the town meeting?
What's anyone after?
May
May
20.
8th?
Oh, that was, oh. May 22.
Next meeting is May 22nd.
May 22nd.
That we actually-
Yeah.
Is that true?
Okay.
May 22nd.
Really? It's a month from now.
Yeah.
And would you just like it prior to May 22nd?
Town
Do you
meeting.
wanna-
Like,
review
you could
period,
tack
or-
him onto your May 8th meeting,
Nope.
but, you know, that's
no,
crazy.
no.
May 8th is the town
We're not-
meeting.
we didn't have enough
We don't
time.
have a chance.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
We could have just a meeting for it, if you're gonna have it, ready in, whatever that is, May 15th or something.
We don't have anything else.
Could you do a week in advance of the meeting? Is that reasonable?
23rd?
Yeah, it has to be posted by the Wednesday or Thursday before, the Thursday before.
Okay.
So
So it would
if
be
you
a
get your
public
pl-
hearing at that point?
No,
No,
it's
okay.
not a public hearing.
Okay.
No,
Just a discussion.
no, it's a discussion lane tonight. and- Yeah,
We post our meetings so people
know what's going on.
who follow the planning board can know when to be here for their topics.
And in the past, we've tried to be polite because of town meeting starts at 7. So we tell, well, come in before the town meeting. It's always a
It always goes
disaster.
wrong.
You know, we're sitting there, we're in the cafeteria, so it's not fair to you or us.
Right.
And we leave at 7.
Yeah.
And to go to the town meeting, so it'd be best to be, pretend it was, get it ready as if you were gonna be here in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That gives you a week grace.
Okay. I can do that. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the input.
Thank you.
Have a good night, guys.
Give me those.
Need me big rocks?
You got big rock to get rid of
Which is why we did this on site, like I said.
Where have they
pushing
ever
the
done
rocks
before
so they
that
want their-
there's something small on the surface that
their
turns out
fence, so
bad?
they want to maintain them and then leave
Texas?
everything back.
Yeah, I ordered my turkeys.
Natural planting,
June
new planting.
All right, 7:20.
Go ahead, announce it.
All right.
Not as bad as you would think.
So we had a public hearing here last time we met, and there were two articles that came in by petition that had some issues associated with them, technical issues that the board wasn't comfortable with, and we were requested, I guess, from the petitioners to, if they had corrected these issues that we had, could they come back and talk to us? And according to our town council, that can happen. We closed the hearing, we had a vote, and we can have this conversation and reconsider.
Recommendations, right.
We can reconsider our recommendations that we would make on town floor when this article comes up. So with that, let's start with Central Pike rezoning from R1 to B2.
Thank you, Bill Wentz, 154 Dodge Hill Road. Thanks for having us back in. I have a copy of the plan if you'd like to pass out. And we have Article 23 in motion. And we've made an amendment to Article 23, which I should have kept it for copy of myself. The Article Amendment 23
There you go.
is, thank you, eliminate 4,235 square feet situated on the northerly side of Central Turnpike from the land to be removed. So the original Article 23 motion we had included 4,200 square feet. The map that Andrews did not. The map was correct, but the description was wrong. And we tried to clean that up for you, and apologize we wasted your time a couple weeks ago and brought it back in. The map that I've given you, the yellow is the proposed lot that we want to have the zoning changed to, and the area in green is the 3.57 acres that make up Central Turnpike. So that total is 6.59, I believe. We'll be asking to be rezoned to B2.
So exactly the same as you saw on the map last time, but the meets and bound description will be corrected to remove Lot 1, which is the area that Nick Niedermacher referenced in the meeting, north of Central Turnpike, that should not have been included in the original description.
That's correct.
So the way it'll work is you can't, it's a petition. So however the petition came in is the way the first motion on town meeting floor must be made. Then they will have to make a motion to amend. Any petitioner that's gonna do that has to actually work with myself, the town clerk, sometimes the moderator, and usually town council, to make sure the amended motion is in the correct form anyways, and it does what it's intended to do. So they had, the first step is them submitting an amended motion, and it looks like it's in good form. It's literally just removing that language for Lot 1. So we would work with them to make sure it's in the correct legal form on the town meeting floor. But they're unlike planning board articles, where if you change them a little at public hearing, the motion can incorporate the changes you made, and you don't have to go through the amendment process. You can't do that on a petition.
Okay. So it gets completely amended on the floor.
On the floor,
Okay.
which is its own bundle of confusion.
Does everybody understand what we're talking, last time we were talking about this, the reason that I recall that we didn't support this as a majority was that it had an incorrect technical description of, that included land on the north side of this green line that's shown on this map. So because it didn't queue up, the drawing didn't queue up with the legal description, we found it conflicting.
So, with the legal description being correct now, does the board have the ability here or at town meeting
No, here,
to recommend it?
right here, you can do it right now.
So the idea, what we can do is make a motion to support or recommend or not recommend this article on town floor. We're reconsidering that.
With the amendment in hand.
With the amendment in hand, would we then recommend on town floor that this article be passed or not?
As you know, you have a memo, a written memo that goes to the members of town meeting that are sitting there. So the applicant has said, we really would like the memo that the members of town meeting have in their hands to say the planning board recommended in the majority. So do we have the ability to do that? So I sent an email to the chairman who makes all of your administrative decisions, and also to town council, seeing if that was even possible, seeing as the hearing was closed, and they said absolutely. Most planning boards actually don't make their recommendations until after the hearing is closed, where we prefer to leave them open so we can have more broader discussion while we're talking about our recommendations. And so they said absolutely, you can absolutely do that, and you can make a recommendation, change your recommendation at any time prior to town meeting. And then Scott came back and said, you know, if it's okay with council, then it's just less confusion really in the memo on the town meeting floor. Though the process of making the motion and amending a motion is going to be confusing on itself, at least the memo from the planning board. You won't be getting multiple recommendations from the planning board on the same article.
And what happened at the FinCons? They were gonna meet the next day, I believe. What did they do?
I still don't have a copy of their recommendations. As you know, they usually defer to you,
Yeah.
but I don't have a copy of those recommendations.
Because what I'm wondering is how does it impact,
Does the applicant
they're
know?
waiting for our,
Do not have an answer from FinCom. I didn't realize they were officially going to decide one way or another.
They
And
often
it-
just defer to the planning board, but
Yeah.
I got a sense that they might have been going to make their recommendation, but I don't have anything in writing from them.
But there's always two recommendations on the floor that the moderator asks for, planning board and FinCom. Well, for planning board articles.
And
because my concern is that they voted based off of our recommendation not to support it.
But they knew why.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They knew exactly why.
He took copious notes. What did he say?
I gave
Yeah,
them the
there
recommendation
was a
memo.
member of
He
the
was- somebody was
FinCom
here.
was here,
Right.
right?
Pat
Yeah.
was here.
Pat was here, and then
So
they did get the written memo.
The lot that's just to the north is currently where B2 ends now. This is just an extension of that. We're not doing spot, it's just an extension of
Existing.
Existing.
B2 actually,
Residential land that is surrounded by residential land.
B2 ends basically the yellow line of Central Turnpike, and it encompasses part of Mrs. Stemp's property as well, which the
So
majority of the land is across from.
the lot that's James Lewis is B2.
James Lewis is, no, that's residential.
Yeah, you have the dividing line. The Business 2 district goes from the center line of 146, and it comes out a distance of, I don't, in that area, honestly, it's between 600 and 1,000.
I think it's
feet in
800,
that
I
area.
think it's 800
Right.
feet.
I think it's about 800 feet deep, right? It's between 600 and 1,000 somewhere.
So
So it comes out that deep, so there's always that line. There's that vertical line that slices through parcels, which is what Mrs. Stem's lot has gotten, that line sliced through it, because it's just an arbitrary, I shouldn't say an arbitrary, but often an arbitrary distance. You have to pick when you do strip zoning like that, you have to pick a width. So whenever they laid that in, many years back, they just picked
An arbitrary
600,
footage.
800, whatever it was.
Right.
And that ends up slicing some lots in half. You'll recall Dana Gravison, when he did Silver Ledge, his lot sliced what is the Mahoney lot now in half. And Dana went in and requested that the zoning line be bumped out to that lot line. So his whole subdivision right there would be residential zone, not business zoned.
which is why
Which
this
I just-
line looks like that.
Yeah, it's got a bump out of it, right?
And that shows on this map as well. So this is B2 right here. This is B2, and there's
Right.
Mahoney,
Right.
residential.
So the B2 wraps around the Mahoney lot. That's the only chink out of the B2 lot. So it comes down, there's a little chink around the Mahoney lot, and then it continues to the center line of Central Turnpike. The proposal is to pick up from the center line of Central Turnpike and pull it down.
The backyard of Mahoney's, for lack of a better term, was B2.
Yes.
Pretty much the backyard.
Yeah,
and that got
basically if you.
cleaned up to be
Yeah,
Term.
Dana Gregerson, when he was building that, he thought, I assumed, that it would be more saleable, or if the residential lots right there were actually zoned residential and there wasn't business as part of those.
It's, for us on the planning board, it's the exact opposite, if you will, where we now have, on the northbound side of 146, I forget the lady's name, that owned the house, where
Mrs. Howard?
Mrs. Howard,
Where is Extra Mart?
where the Extra Mart is. She put an ad in the paper that said, 12 acres of a house of residential land available in Sutton. And people drove out to Sutton, and that wasn't their vision of living in Sutton, because it was zoned, and that was and we said to her when she came in, and she was very, very pleasant and scared to death, and said, for us to make this proposal, it may not fly well on the town meeting floor, but if you come and just stand up and talk about your dilemma, because people come, but they leave fast. And now if you change it to business, you have a gas station and a Dunkin' Donuts that wants to build there. And that's exactly how it happened, and then we killed them.
Yeah.
On buffers and all that stuff, and the drive-through, the separate drive-through, what they went through, and I guess it's successful, there's people there.
I'm sure it's successful, yeah.
Because of Boston Road, I go to Raymondville. Even as a mess it is, I don't want to be down at that intersection. So we're kind of and we have to do things as we always have. I find myself sitting here, it's an opposite, it's not an island. It'd be a tough lot to sell to someone as residential, if you advertise it. I have residential house lot in Sutton for sale. And we can't make decisions based on what's best for an individual. We've got to think about everybody. So when I see an extension of something that's existing, and then as you bring up it, we did the exact opposite for someone that's now owned by Mahoney. You're the one that's going to be on the town floor. We're just reporting, recommending.
Actually, for the record, it probably won't be me being on the conservation board. It might be a conflict, so someone else from the.
So it'd be someone from, it's a
But
resident.
it wouldn't be you folks doing it.
It's the resident that's making it.
Yes.
And then we have the town moderator reports what the board's recommended. So I find myself in the same situation that I was with Mrs. Howard. That's just me.
And there's only room for one structure.
Right, and I drive by this every day, and I look at it and say, I thought it was the highways. Actually, I thought it was all state land.
It's a hand in the back.
Right in the back.
Carla Stem, 190 Central Turnpike. I just have a question so I understand more the town's need and the way I feel about it. The total acreage in this town already zoned for business is how much?
Oh, gosh.
It's about 6% of the total.
No, how many acres though?
How many acres
I
are in
don't
the town
have
of
that on the
Sutton?
top of my head.
Okay, so it's
6% of 34 square
6% of
miles.
What is our acreage?
34 square miles.
6% of 34
34
miles.
square
34
miles
square miles,
approximately.
so it's a fair amount of land.
Actually, it's 21,760 acres in the town of Sutton. 6% of that's about 12,000.
12,000 acres for business. And out of that, right now, how much of it has sewer and water?
Well, that's 12,000 for business, industrial, office light industrial, village.
Right, everything
and R2.
non-residential.
Yeah, so that's 5 different districts in there, so.
Show her that map. Maybe that.
I don't know the answer on water and sewer. I would guess half of it, maybe
But I
a
know
third.
you were looking
Wow.
at 2 different areas when you were showing us a map
Mhm.
that were business areas, and one had sewer and water and one area didn't.
Right, the red zone, hold up the teeny tiny map. The red zone, which runs from the Millbury
146.
Town Line to Central
Yeah.
Turnpike, that's the business district where you do offices, retail, restaurants.
And that has sewer and water?
There is a very tiny portion of that that has water and sewer. Water and sewer runs across Boston Road at
Boston
the
Road, right here.
lights, and that's it. That's the only place it is. So if you're immediately at Boston Road and Route 146, you have access to sewer, and
And down here.
and then the orange areas are office light industrial. In the office light industrial, you can do some retail, very limited by special permit, but it's mostly for offices and industrial uses.
So this zoning change, what would it be
It would
allowed
add
for?
some red. It would add more red area. So you'd take the red area.
You wanna come up here and look at this?
And you just
You
be
can see
adding
your
a chunk
property
to
on
the
it,
red.
actually.
Do we know how much is available that is sitting there not developed? That's already zoned for business and it's not even being used yet?
Not a lot. Not a lot.
Not enough, actually. You see all this highway we can't build on? This is our challenge
You can't not
here.
just build here. From this point, from this river south, even though this is zone business, you cannot put any new driveways in. Because this highway was built with both federal and state funds, so it's no access. So any driveways that are in this area are the only driveways you can still have. You can't put any new driveways onto 146 from this point
Okay.
all the way to
So this is,
the Uxbridge line.
Where am I right
on
now?
this
So
drawing,
you're right here, that parcel is kind of half,
Right here, that's that
those two
parcel
colors,
is
white
right
and
there.
red. So they're just
there's the
bumping
other
this
one right
red
there.
down
That's
to
it.
include this. So that this would then go to red. So you're just pulling that down.
But so far, all the red is on that north side.
Well, it's northbound and southbound. Yes, north
Right,
and south.
but I mean, it's north of Central Turnpike.
Oh, yeah,
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 it's
that
all
was the
north.
way, it-
And now you're
Yep.
trying to go south.
yeah, one parcel
but this will
south.
be it, because this is state, all state property.
Right,
Purgatory, you just can't do anything down there.
right.
But
Mhm.
this piece of land here,
This is state as well, this big one.
this is state, so it's kind of a nice reserved area right now, this piece.
Well, yeah,
And there's,
a lot of those.
and I know over in here, there's, signs on the trees that it's part of the Purgatory Reserve land.
Yep. Or the Sutton State Forest, actually, I think in that area.
Yeah,
Right.
What people actually do is they park here in the hunting season, they walk in the woods at this point. That's where they go into the woods. Right across this property.
I understand that. I've had men with guns right in my backyard.
You have.
And they have shot deer in Tim Mahoney's backyard, and that was within 500 feet of the house, and nobody cared. Nobody cared.
So,
We did, but the town people, the police and such, they didn't care. So. I had police in my yard last night shooting a deer.
busy
So-
place over there.
It is. Too busy. And this is the thing, it's getting hard to get out the driveway, and you go putting a business there on top of it. Up and down Central Turnpike, I don't see a whole lot of business.
There's not resident,
There
they're not
isn't.
zoned for it, that's right.
Right. It's not zoned for it.
Except at the
Because-
exchange, that's the place to have business.
But this is zoned residential. Right across the street is a residence. On the side of it is a residence. And this
way-
is the thing, we want to be respected too. We understand the town's needs. But, we've been taxpayers all these years. We bought our property with it being a residential area. We want that respect too.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
All about the money.
Any other questions? Questions up here? Is there a motion?
You guys.
Don't make motions.
Well, I have to make a motion to get a second so we can have a discussion. And what the vote has to be.
You can let
Simple
your
majority.
existing recommendation stand, or you can make a new recommendation with the amendment in place. These are your options. One,
Well, I'll make the recommendation that we move this parcel What's it called?
Recommend that town meeting or do not recommend that town meeting? Rezone.
Well, I'll make a recommendation that we rezone this as business, what's it gonna be?
B2.
B2. I need a second, then we can have a discussion and actually vote.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay, all in favor? Now, so now the motion is different than last time. This motion is to take the position that we would recommend on town floor, that this zoning change is in effect. We support the applicant.
I do have one comment about it. I'm a big proponent for the town people voting for issues, rather than, I know we're not putting this forward,
Right.
that a petitioner is,
Right.
and I'm kind of on the fence, I hear what people are saying, but, let it go to the town vote. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, it's gonna go anyways.
I want to say the same thing. We did make a recommendation based on what was brought in.
Mhm.
Had it been brought in correct, I think we probably would have made a recommendation different. I hope there's a lot of discussion about this piece of property on town floor, because I think far too many town meetings haven't had any discussion on the floor.
Right.
And, we've had more discussion about a couple of things lately in this meeting than we've had in a long time here, too. As with Miriam, I see both sides, I really do. I see the residents' side. It comes to a point on Central Turnpike. Now we're crossing Central Turnpike to add into this district. Is it gonna make a big difference? I don't think it's gonna make a big difference. But I'm torn about this one. I hear Mrs. Stem's comments. I hear the proponent's comments. If it was my land, I'd want to do what I want to do with it, but the way it's zoned, I might not be able to do that right now. That's all I have to say.
Let me make a comment as well.
Go ahead.
So, I'm struggling with this one as well. Last time I actually voted in favor, I was against I think we voted to not recommend it. I voted
To recommend.
to recommend it. I think what I'm struggling with here is that we had that in a public hearing, and now we're doing it outside, even though the legal counsel said, so I'm kind of struggling with that a little bit. I struggle with the fact that when we run into residential and business districts, it makes it challenging.
Always that line where they clash.
Yeah, and
Industrial and office light industrial and,
Yeah.
there's always that point where they touch.
so that's a challenge that I want to acknowledge, and there is very limited business in this town, districts with very limited opportunity. I think this impact would be relatively small, but again, I think this is the way this was presented, I think it created more challenges that leave me in conflict, particularly now that we're addressing this outside of public hearing. And so that's kind of where I stand. I'm kind of struggling with it.
I said my piece.
Call for vote. All in favor of recommending and supporting this article as written, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Hey.
So what was that? I didn't hear.
4-1.
And abstain? No abstain. What was it?
You're trying to mess with me.
I couldn't tell.
All right, can you call it again and
Aye.
everybody?
All in favor, raise your hand for aye. 3?
Aye.
4?
Three.
4. He raised his hand.
Yeah,
Okay.
I did.
4, 1.
Okay, so you were in there, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, 4-1. And John, I'm just going to your comments. for your-
It's mainly to do with the doing this at a public hearing. we already made a recommendation.
Gotcha.
I hope there's healthy discussion on this one at the town meeting.
May 8th,
And,
but we're at the end of that warrant, so that's probably more like 8 or.
Stick around.
and to the applicant, you need to make sure that this is presented properly. Confusion is not a good thing at town meeting.
For the record, I do want to apologize on behalf of my family and I for having this wrong. Not what we wanted. Obviously, as you could tell a couple weeks ago, we were not happy about it. And by no means did we want to disturb anything here, and we didn't want to have to come see you guys again, quite honestly. I do want to thank you all for your time, and I appreciate you guys giving
Okay.
back to the town as you do. Thank you very much.
All right, solar.
So now we'll hear reconsideration of bylaw recommendation on the solar overlay district. Attorney Lane.
And this is another one?
And you have your language in your map, right?
There's one typo in there.
No.
Henry.
Typo.
Well, actually, it's transposition, which is probably my fault.
Looking at it, right?
2603 should be 26-0.
26, 3, yeah. We're adding and subtracting some. It could have been dyslexic.
Thank you.
So it should be 2630?
And that's the second one, 2630.1. I'm good.
Thank you.
Yours matches mine, right?
Yep.
Yep, yours matches. Yep. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. As you'll recall, when you were here, 10 days ago, the board took a vote to not recommend this article, primarily because the area that was encompassed by the proposed overlay district was very large and larger than the board thought was appropriate. And based on the comments of the public and the abutters, we're perfectly comfortable with reducing the proposed overlay district from 185 acres to 40 acres, which basically encompasses the land that is owned by the proponents, shall we call them, since they are technically not the petitioners. As was represented last time, this is a site that has been picked by National Grid to enhance their renewable resource program, which will have two components, but primarily solar energy production and some storage to sort of even out the production of electricity from solar sources. Obviously, the solar panels only work when the sun shines, so they have a storage component in here to sort of store the energy that's produced, so they meter it out to sort of even out the production of energy, then sending it back into the grid. So that's the proposal. It's a relatively small proposal, as you recall. That hasn't changed. It's only a little portion of that site that is easterly of the gas pipeline, which is the sort of dark line in the middle of it. That's the existing Tennessee gas pipeline right of way. So it will be between that gas pipeline and the easterly boundary of the zone. Totally invisible from Route 146 and totally, essentially inaccessible from Sutton anywhere. Basically a piece of land that has no access in Sutton, very limited use, and it seemed to be ideal for this particular use, which would generate some significant income to the town with virtually no demand on its resources. So, as I said, we were perfectly comfortable with reducing the district. It now, as I say, has about 40 acres, and that seemed to be the major objection, both from the public as well as from the board. So our request is simply that the board reconsider its vote and make a recommendation that the town meeting approved the creation of the overlay district with this reduced area.
And with the
Wait,
amended,
one sec. In the hallway?
Yeah.
Thank you.
as well as with the amended language, because the language is amended from the petition. Pretty much the same intent, it's just the proper section
Scaled back.
numbers and the kind of right verbiage in accordance with consultation with council.
Language a little to satisfy the town planner and the town attorney and the other
So this,
people that matter.
this shows 40 acres, and the actual space for the panels is probably half that roughly.
Less than half, I think it's
5
only
to
about
7, he said.
five
Is
to
the
7.
anticipated project.
There's no backyards, knowing the people that were here.
No, we
Alright.
eliminated
Nowhere
all
close.
Oh, that's
all
what-
the
yeah.
owners. There's
Nowhere
no-
close.
There's no other abutters.
Yeah, they were here, right?
Yeah, I've been talking with Mr. Gopfert, who was the gentleman who was here. He actually was in my office twice last week. He's what the adjustment is, and he's much
And
more comfortable.
Is he okay with it?
He's more comfortable with this proposal, yes.
And this is going to be proposed, we're just making a recommendation, just like the previous article.
And just as information, were some of those people were notified that this was happening tonight?
I didn't know about either of these really until kind of, I think, Thursday, so I
Right, it was
immediately
late.
sent out mail notices to
Yeah.
well, I shouldn't say all the same parties, on this one, to Mr. Gopfert, to any abutters to this area, and as well as the people on Central Turnpike. So, again, not required by law, but I wanted the same, as many of the same people here as possible to be notified.
And this is an overlay, this isn't a rezoning, this is an overlay.
Yep, overlay.
Which, what that means is just like the overlay for the center of town here, if someone else comes along and says, I'd like to apply that overlay to my area of town, that would be, go through the same type of process.
They have to go through the same process we're going through.
Right.
Petition.
So the underlying zoning stays in place, and you only add the uses that are detailed in the overlay district. So in this case, like it says,
Large scale solar.
underlying zoning in which large are allowed as of right.
And this is large. The biggest one we have is Oakhurst, that's,
Well, large can be any size over 250
no, I'm saying 20,
kW.
yeah,
This is a
20 acres
megawatt.
is big.
This is,
Oakhurst is 2.6 total.
Acres.
no.
Oh, I don't know how many acres, but it's 2.6 megawatts is Oakhurst. This is 1 megawatt.
It's less
We're
than
talking
one
about
Boston
size
Road.
in two different
Mega-
contexts.
Megawatt, yeah. The one down in Northbridge, Oakhurst, half of it's in Northbridge, half of it's in Sutton.
Right.
But the total, the combined total is less than half of Oakhurst. This is a relatively small site, it's only
Okay.
1 mega, it's one of the
1
smallest
megawatt.
sites you're ever, it's called large, but it's actually one of the smallest ground-mounted areas you'll see.
This is,
Mr. Chairman, I want to make a
this will be
motion.
smaller than the one that is, the rock pile.
Just a little bit smaller.
A little bit
The
smaller.
rock pile. That's a good one. That's a good one.
That was a pretty unlikely site, I couldn't believe they actually built that there.
I know.
My client was very happy to lease it to him, because he couldn't find any other use for the site either. By the way, I was interested in the comment you made about that extra market, which my client also owns.
Right.
He was happy, he'll be happy to hear that you went out of your way to kill him with regulations.
Yeah, no, we,
Route 146
But-
overlay, it's gotta be.
It's
But it's a
what
livable setup.
yeah,
What's that?
It's very livable.
it's what we have to do, it's what we
No,
have to
It
do.
actually came out very nice.
How many
Yeah.
Dunkin' Donuts lines are you encumbered by every morning driving somewhere?
Yeah, all you have to do is drive.
Not there, not
146
there.
south, then 160.
Yeah. No, I mean, it worked, in the end, the neighbors got, what they want.
Yeah,
They,
I'm every
we held
morning,
their
that's
feet
what
to the
we
fire and they
complain.
did it, and it doesn't appear that they're going broke there.
No,
There's
they're
tons
doing-
of, they're doing an
fine.
incredible business.
The only thing
Cash cow.
that's bad there is that originally it's
Right,
not good.
And Mass
That's
Highway has
been-
actually extended it, and it's still not long enough.
still rough.
Yeah.
It's much improved. I'm in there
Yes.
every day I go to work. I was in there this morning.
It's
At
extended.
5:30. Yes. And extending that lane made a major difference.
Yes.
Did you have a question?
That's
Yeah,
quite
no, I
slow,
want to make a
but it's-
motion.
It still could
I
be
think
longer.
we've discussed it enough, so I want to make a motion that we recommend, how do I label it?
Were there any comments from out here?
The article as amended.
I recommend the article as amended for a Section 5 overlay district, for solar photovoltaic overlay district, and it's reduced.
40 acres.
It's reduced, and it appears to be a good use of the land and sound planning, in my humble opinion.
Second it.
Okay, so the motion is to support this, so we recommend this on town floor. If we vote in the affirmative to support this petition article. Any other questions?
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
So last time I didn't support this, just because of the precedence I was worried about, but now that we've reduced the scale, and also hearing kind of the use of this, for National Grid, I do think that it makes sense, especially where this is really right along the highway, and this does really not affect any neighbors, really. But I still am in the same situation I am with the last proponent, is that if this had been done correctly the first time, we could have done this with public hearing, and now we're doing it after we've already made a recommendation, so for that I can't support it. But overall, I do think this is a good site for this.
Any other comments? Call for a vote, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstain.
Did you get a count on that?
Huh?
4-1.
4-1.
4-1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Maybe a quick meeting, Marlene.
Did you say a few minutes ago you couldn't make motions?
No, she made it.
Yeah, it was a little bit.
I said,